The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in the podcast belong solely to the hosts and not the host's past, present, or future employers. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. It's just little old me this week. Ironically enough, for the last couple episodes here for Breaking Down Security for the year. But I have a friend, Miss Berlin, Mr. Betcher. Hold on, man. It's an audio podcast. He's waving, but we'll have him on in a second. Miss Berlin and Mr. Betcher are out. Miss Berlin's out, ice skating, and Mr. Betcher's, taking time with the fam. So it's just me clearing out the end of the year here. Now I don't know if you've been in a coma, like 28 days later kind of style here, but he liked that one. But there was a little vulnerability that happened the week of January December the 10th, or 13th actually is when it, the 10th, December the 10th, 2021, date, which will, everyone will curse, that it was called Log4j, and I'm going to call it Log4j because that's what it is. I'm not going to deal with all the bullshit that was on Twitter. And so, just following this, we actually delayed this show a day or two because it just kept moving along and there were more developments and stuff. And I'm actually glad we waited until Wednesday of this week to do it on the 15th here, because there were still things coming in even as late as the 14th. So I'm going to stop rambling and I'm going to invite Mick Douglas on. He's been on the show more than once. He's pretty much a friend of the show, and our cousin from another cousin brother.
I love it.
Son from another mother or something like that. Anyway, Mick, thanks for coming on and talking with us about this.
Oh, well, thanks for having me. It's always fun. And I think of you as a sister from another mister.
Oh, there you go. Okay. So when he first joined our show this week, first thing I noticed was he is in a hotel room because I recognized the curtains and the decor was all white.
Yep.
So where are you right now?
I am in lovely Washington, D.C. at the SANS CDI conference.
Okay. And this is like the big thing. Well, isn't SANS that's one of the big ones, right?
That is one of the major ones. So Orlando, CDI, right. This one, and Vegas are the main three ones. Okay. Yeah, I went to the one in San Diego back in 2017. I think it's like Sands West or something like that. Yep. But that was a good time too. I got my GCIH there. So cool. So for those people that are unaware of who you are, maybe you could tell people, give people a 30-minute elevator pitch about who you are, what you do, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Now, was that a Freudian slip? 30-minute?
Oh, I'm sorry, 30-second. 30-second. It's been a long week and it's only Wednesday.
This is an ultra long form podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So folks, hey, my name's Mick. I'm a SANS instructor. I teach primarily two courses, 504, which is the Hacker Techniques and Incident Response class, which is probably why I've been roped into the show. And then the other class that I teach is 555, which is the SIM and tactical analytics. So in my spare time, I'm a member of the IONS faculty, and I run my own InfoSec Innovations, which is a boutique consultancy where we focus on blue defensive type work, but we also try to keep a certain amount of our portfolio offensive because offense informs defense.
Excellent. Okay. And he's also a Better Safety Net on Twitter. So
correct.
He is probably one of the few people I have followed for the longest time. I'm coming up on 9 years of following people, lurking mostly. He's always very, very useful if you want to get the blue side's point of view on things. So All right, so let's talk about Log4j.
Mhm.
When it first hit on Friday, last Friday, the first thing people said was, "Oh, not a huge deal," and then it was all of a sudden like, "Oh wow, wowie wow, oh my god,"
Yep.
and then because tell us why Log4j is kind of a big deal in this respect.
Right. So the Log4j, the reason that it's so problematic is that it allows an attacker to craft a string that they will inject into web applications or any kind of input field or even inside cookie values. And if it gets parsed by a vulnerable Log4j instance, instead of looking up and doing analysis against internal servers as expected, the way the code works is you can make a request to any potential resource. And as long as you don't have like strong egress firewalls, there's literally nothing stopping you as the attacker from making requests for any number of resources. And the thing that makes it even weirder is in many instances, any protocol. So it was meant to be used for doing things. This particular class that's vulnerable was meant to be used for doing LDAP queries against your own internal LDAP infrastructure. But because it was written the way that it was written, you could make requests against pretty much anything on the internet.
Right. Right. And later on, and as of I think we saw Monday, late Monday or Tuesday, people were able to do things like, look at your EC2 instances and pull your Amazon private keys or other environment variables or
right. It's through the environment variables that they're able to do that. And the reason that they're able to do that is if that code, if the vulnerable Log4j instance is in your Amazon instance, in many cases, when people are instantiating things like containers, those containers will have environment variables. And one of the researchers who was playing with this exploit realized that you can craft a request such that a command actually gets interpreted and environment variables will be interpreted. One of the things that confused me greatly was early on, I think this was Sunday when I saw this. It's been a blur. I could be wrong. But one of the things that really confused the snot out of me was I saw a request come in where it was asking for a host name and it was casting the host name to upper. And I was like, why? And then it occurred to me when it makes the response back and it's requesting it's saying, hey, I'm requesting this, and you get the host name in uppercase, you know that your code actually was interpreted. And so once people started nibbling on that, like it was off to the races. And they said, well, hey, like let's start enumerating environment variables. And from that instant, like as soon as they got that, they were like, oh, let's grab some keys, let's grab these things, let's do this. And it's like that's part of the reason it's so scary is that it's in a lot of ways it's like a slightly inconvenient VPN into your infrastructure for the attacker.
Right. Yeah, I think somebody had mentioned on Twitter, and I have, it's been since lost to the ether, but this is one of those things where you could pretty much own every layer down once you start with the WAF, which is, everybody's running some sort of Java or, Log4j, and there's so many applications out there. As a matter of fact, there are a ton of links in our show notes here to various aggregations of applications. People stood up Google Docs saying, hey, major corporations and organizations and software bundles like the Ciscos and the Palo Altos and and things that you wouldn't even think about, like Chef, for instance, uses Java in some places, the using Solar and all that. And it's pretty much, is this vulnerable? And then a lot of the quick questions is yes, but it's really hard to find that, because sometimes these things are buried so deep under so many different dependencies, and then we're back to dependency hell again. But so the way this started is kind of odd, because everybody's like, oh, it's an O day, and they talked about this being a cluster O day thing, and then there's somebody said, well, no, this was mentioned back in 2009 and it was patched in JDK, and then
so time out on that one. I need to push back on that. The 2009, that we didn't even have the same series of Log4j at that time. That didn't exist.
Okay. All right,
so the earliest, at least so far that I've heard of, was at there was a Black Hat talk in 2016,
right,
where the concept was discussed. There was no weaponized code released at that time,
right,
and it was talking about how you can abuse these sorts of functions. And I went back, and it does lay it all out, and it's correct, but there never was any exploit code until, as far as I know, the very first instance of exploit being used in the wild was on the 1st of December. And then on the 9th of December and the 10th of December, a couple days after the patch was made available, I think it was 3 days after the patch was made available, we started seeing global exploitation of it. Now, so is it an O-Day? Yeah, maybe. But right now, it's not an O-Day attack. There's been a patch. There have been patches.
Right.
So it's just kind of a weird thing, though. Because, there's... For this attack, it seems like everything about it is convoluted. There's nothing really crisp about this one.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of information out there. I mean, there was even somebody who had found the initial commit message or feature request that somebody had put up about, hey, it would be nice if we could do JDN message lookups. And the devs were like, okay, yeah, we'll get that in. And like 2 days later, boom, it's in. And everybody's like, and of course, everyone's like, hindsight being 2020, I'm sure there was a valid use case for JDNI message lookups at the time. But go ahead.
Well, yeah, no, it's a legit, it's an edge case to be sure, but for those that do it makes sense. The thing, and I am okay with those. What the problem is that those configs, that kind of a lookup should not be allowed to go anywhere. It should only go to like your own server infrastructure, maybe a trusted business partners, but to allow anybody to go YOLO anywhere, that's where we really, that was the first step of several where things went sideways.
Yep. And of course, and I think we talked about this a little bit before, but the response to this, of course, runs the gambit of blaming the developers for doing so, and we find out that there's really only 2 developers on this. Pretty much like most web apps, with modules, you've got they get 500,000 downloads a day or something. You find out it's one guy or person who's doing it in their off time or something. You find out that this Log4j is managed by like 2 people who are unpaid, and it's pretty much one of those linchpin systems of the internet, sadly. And then we get into discussions that we'll talk a little bit about later, but there was a lot going on there, and it's unfortunate because this is up until 5 days ago is a linchpin of the internet. Everybody uses it, and people were saying, patch your Java and, whatever. But then we find out, well, you could have a fully patched Java, but still have an unpatched Log4j. So, everybody was wanting to blame Oracle, which, I was one of those people. I was like, fucking Oracle or whatever, but this is an independent system from Java in some cases, and yeah, there definitely is a lot to unpack. And I don't know why that is. I mean, people were like, oh, this is worse than Heartbleed. And I'm like, well, we saw the same types of issues with Heartbleed, where it was like OpenSSL was a linchpin of the internet. I mean, pretty much everything HTTPS required an OpenSSL lib. And it was managed by a bunch of folks who were not paid for it. I mean, and
Right.
And then, after it was found out that this was happening, things like the OpenSSL Foundation was created. Corporations decided to, stop, taking advantage of these open source.
Hold on a second though. The OpenSSL Corporation was largely in response to what the OpenBSD project did when they ran Project Valhalla Rampage, and they started. If I don't know if you remember that, but I've been in the OpenBSD community since like 2.4, and what they did was they took the OpenSSL code and started making Libre SSL.
Right.
And what was happening was the commits, like they just started shredding the code base, and it was really I appreciate what they did. Some of what they did was in exceedingly poor taste in terms of like really dogging on these developers, like, oh, you should have known this, you should have known that. And yeah, shoulda, but didn't. And you know what? Like I worked at an insurance company at the time, and this one executive vice president was furious about this vulnerability, like to the point that he is yelling and veins are bulging out his neck. And he's like, I can't believe they let us down, these OpenSSL people. And I was like, well, you know what? How about you ask a refund? Right? See, that's the thing that pisses me off, is that everybody's using this software that we get for free. And, there's a thing you said that I kind of want to nudge against. You earlier in the banter, you said that, that's the cost of open source software, is that you run into these problems. I think that that's more of a symptom of a bigger issue, is that, we have this weird survival of the fittest in the open source community. People build code because they just want to. It scratches an itch. But then at a certain point, that code is like nifty enough that people start building on it. And eventually you're just this like little twig that is holding up a significant portion of the internet.
Yep.
And then lo and behold, oh my gosh, this isn't a load-bearing twig. Well, no. It, like, again, in this instance, two dudes just like hacking for funsies. Right. And like, it's unfortunate that this happened, but like, I don't know, like in no other profession would I expect, like, hey, these Boeing airplanes are doing great, but did you know that the landing gear are just made by these two like dudes in their garage? And sometimes the landing gear fails. Like, that's so weird, right? Like, that just doesn't make sense to me.
Well, okay. So this was something we talked about beforehand, though, I think. Yeah. I do want to back up a little bit on that. Yes, there are a lot of companies that are using free and open source software and not giving back to the community, but there are companies like Amazon and Oracle and Microsoft. I did say Oracle. They do contribute code back to open source projects. They do contribute there, and I would say they do pay their way in terms of things like code audits and code review, but there are a vast number of companies. And we talked to ByteBleeder about this a couple of years ago, where we were trying to incentivize open source software. He was a bit prophetic there, ByteBleeder. He had a piece of software he was working with for a few years, always trying to get people to help volunteer and help out with it, do code reviews, improve the product. And he got like one pull request in like 3 years and something. And, he was talking about incentivizing some of these groups and like the Log4j folks to, to help them one, continue doing what they're doing and potentially find more people to help out. But yeah, I mean, in my terms, when I thought the real cost of open source, when companies aren't paying for this, what they're paying for is lost opportunity costs in all of their people having to scramble to do incident response, to do patching, how many hours were wasted this week in IR calls or on call or patching or, downtime. If something brought your systems down, how much are you actually paying in terms of that? Where if you had, potentially been able to help these folks or, do some, have some, volunteer for some code review or something, might have been able to find these issues ahead of time or, even something as simple as threat modeling, some of these things.
I'm not hearing it. And here's why.
You're not hearing it? Oh.
I'm not hearing it. You're not wrong, but here's the thing, okay? This all goes away if you had an egress firewall.
No, that's too easy. No. I need
that's the thing. Like, you don't have to be. You can be vulnerable, and if the attacker drops the code and they can't make their callback, what's the problem? That's the thing that's driving me insane. Is everybody's like, well, it's gonna be hard to find. It's gonna be hard to patch. Okay, fine. Why are we allowing rando lookups to, like, God knows where? Like, that's the thing that kills me. We know that we make software mistakes. We've known about it forever and a day. Why is it that we set the software up to fail in this spectacular of a fashion? Like, the thing that we have to stop doing is, like, focusing on Log4j and talk about the whole ecosystem of why it's able to explode in such in such a great way. Now, yes, we should have an asset inventory. We should have a software inventory. We should know where our Log4j instances are and be able to patch them. But patching isn't the only way forward. And that's kind of what, like, kind of got me into this foray is, like, I have some clients that can't patch for a couple reasons, and I can't really get into it due to NDAs, but, like, right. there are market verticals where patching, you don't have that luxury.
Right. So, okay. That is fair.
And scraped a raw nerve.
No, it's okay. I'm good with that. Because like you said, if we'd have just been controlling what is exiting our ugly networks out to the internet, we might have this might have been just a line item somewhere instead of it being 2021 44 228 or whatever. Is like, oh my God's day or whatever. So okay, we have another section we want to talk about, which is inspired by that blog, by that tweet. But we'll get to that in a second. The one thing I do want to bring up about this particular vulnerability is how some people in our community handled it. Some of them, some better than others. But what I love about this, and this is, we have Mubix, Rob Fuller, awesome dude. If you've ever met him at a conference, he's really awesome. You should definitely talk to him and take the time to pick his brain a little bit. A lot of times when we see vulnerabilities, especially ones that are named, and this one was odd because it didn't have a name. It wasn't like, oh my God, 2021 or, dirty cow or, filthy lemur or whatever. It had no name. It was just Log4j. And I think later on people started calling Log4Shell or whatever. But what I loved about some of the stuff, and you did some of this too, Rob had created slides and diagrams, which I have put a link in our show notes. The first link in our show notes is to his post with those in there, explaining exactly how this works. And this is something that you don't see with a lot of vulnerabilities, especially, awful, soul crushing ones like this. But he went through and I would almost call them XKCD like. In their simplicity, but I mean, they communicate a lot of information in a very small area. So, he goes through and he's telling you about exploit attempts, and he's, showing you the back and forth. The attacker makes a malicious request to the web server sends a triggered request back. The attacker can load a class file load, and then you get command and control back to the attacker. Great. It's an easy, simple way of seeing, exactly the handshake that has to occur for this. And then it shows in progress attack attempts. And, you can send out, malicious requests to things like VMware log servers, mobile apps, email servers, database servers, Wi-Fi, et cetera. And then, he starts talking about, current protections against these attempts. And, you're looking at various, ways that this can be done with firewalls. And I think what you're talking about with egress, controlling egress, but he created a bunch of, slides like you did talking about how these things affect or are affecting the vulnerability. And this is, a lot of the things that security people have to deal with. First is, does this affect us? And then having to go to brief to leadership for 15 hours straight about why this is a thing. And, getting them to care, because that this is bad, but you need them to care as badly as you do so that you can actually get stuff done, or we get licenses, or, what needs to be done. And that's a whole nother podcast that we've talked about with incident response and communications, and, who's the incident commander and what have you. But, these are great aids that you can use when briefing your leadership. And Mick, of course, you created a separate set of slides talking about business impact and criticality to organizations that, they're already made. You can just go grab them, put them into your own slide deck, make a few changes that are org specific to you potentially. And you have an easy way that you're not spending hours trying to go, okay, how do I explain this in hand puppet terms to, the people who are important, whatever. This was something that I hadn't seen a lot of with other vulnerabilities. And I don't know if it's just because I don't know if it's because I've been in a hole or whatever, but I didn't see a lot of that. What was your thought about all these things? Have you seen anything like this before, or is this new, where have you ever created slides like this to, for release, or seen where other people have posted slides like this?
So I've made these sorts of slides for my clients in the past. One of the things that I feel makes me an effective coach or teacher or mentor is that I've got a certain amount of technical acumen, but the thing that I really feel that kind of I'm blessed with is that I have the ability to explain it in a way to people of various skill levels in a way that really doesn't insult their intelligence. And one of the things that I did, and though they really wish to be nameless, I wish I could give a shout out to the two executives that helped me with that deck. I put together the skeleton of it, and then they helped refine those 4 main slides. So if you've not seen the deck, there's like 20 or so slides, all but 4 of them are hidden, and you can use the hidden slides as resources, or they help you explain how to present those 4 slides. And the thing that I've seen, having been at board presentations and meetings with executive leadership, is that people will get up there and they'll spend 5 minutes explaining a situation. You don't have that time. Right. So you just have to say, here's the issue, here's why we care, here's what we need. And, let me know if you need more details. That's all right. You have. And a lot of people, and it seems to be like IT and InfoSec are like, well, this is really important. So I'm going to give them the details. They don't care. They do not care. They just don't. Right. And they shouldn't have to.
Yeah. Well, so I told you where I work at.
Yep.
And sometimes there are people that wish, that are senior leadership who still think they believe they belong in the trenches, or they like to have that kind of control. You have to find that fine line, right, between what they actually need to know and what they think they need to know. Right. And I think some of it is trying to find that line, but depending on who's running the incident response, if you're the person having to brief them and then go, do 15 other things, this is one of those things where you should really have somebody communicating while you're out, making sure that the building isn't burning down. Maybe engage your PR company, or your PR organization to say, okay, look, you talk for a living. That's your thing. You're the one who delivers messages. Here's what I need you to tell them. in that case. I think at this juncture, if you're having to brief people regularly, it would be good to bring in somebody who is a proper wordsmith to do so. And you can definitely use mixed slides for that, and then just help the PR person understand what to say, so that way we can have more effective incident response in this case. Because I know that there are still people probably working these issues, because it does take a long time sometimes to get this done.
So this one, I know that this is not the news that people want to hear, but I am now convinced that this is going to take about a year to clear up.
Shut up. Really? Why?
Really? Well, so there's several factors here. Number one, there's all kinds of embedded systems that are potentially impacted. Yeah, right. That's one. Number two, what about the healthcare devices? If you're a medical device, you are not on a normal patch cycle. Then there's quite a few ICS folks that I've been chatting with. They know they're vulnerable, but they don't have shutdown time, so they can't afford any patch time. So it actually, the timing on this in some ways is kind of cool, because like some industries, like they'll do what are called plant shutdown around like Christmas or New Year's, and so they'll have the opportunity to patch. Had this happened earlier in the year, like say February or something, it might have been almost a full calendar year before they could have patched. So it's going to be a real long tail. Now, I think, like, and this is just shooting from the hip, 60-70% are going to be able to patch, and have things like mostly handled by New Year's. But it's going to be a long tail.
Right. Okay. Yeah. As I was following some of this, we talked about dependency hell earlier, and some of the stuff people had mentioned, this is why we need SBOM. SBOM will save us. And we've had Dr. Alan Friedman on talking about software bill of materials. And of course, Katie Masuris weighed in and said, yeah, this won't solve the problem. It's just a visibility issue. And I believe, and I want to paraphrase, I don't want to paraphrase too badly here, but she said, this is, an SBOM is somewhere between actually, it's like right in the middle between actually knowing, exactly what's going on and like being able to patch these things. Or God damn it. Now I'm going to have to go look that up, because I feel like I just butchered the hell out of that, and she's going to kill me. So she said, anyone saying you use an SBOM right now during this phase of response, you don't reply unless you're actually using an SBOM. She says, I know they're only an ingredient list of components, and one needs exploitability info for any given product that uses a vulnerable package like Log4j to know if a product is vulnerable. How, except via testing, would you know? She said, if testing is still the de facto method for determining exploitability of a product A versus product B, if they both use Log4j, then why are people saying SBOMs are the key at this stage of response? Hopefully my wording was clear enough to avoid the condescension I usually get. So yeah, it's just another form of inventory, no different than assets. Yeah. Several people had mentioned, hey, the SANS, or not SANS anymore, it's CIS top 20, but it's like asset inventory is still your, greatest weapon that you have, either hardware or software in this environment. So.
Yep, they're 1 and 2 for a reason, and they're not glamorous. We all focus on like they've got them down to 18 now, and 18 is pen testing, right? Right. So everybody's like, "Ooh, pen testing," and I get it, right? Like everybody goes to the dessert. Nobody wants to eat the vegetables, but you got to eat your vegetables.
That was our show for this week. You can find show notes for this and all of our shows at www.breakingsecurity.com. You can also find an RSS link on the site to add to your favorite podcatcher. You can find all of us on Twitter. Miss Berlin can be found at InfoSyster, INFOSYSTIR. Mr. Betcher can be found at BetcherPwned, BOETTCHERPWNED. And you can follow me on Twitter at Brian Brake, BRYANBRAKE. We have a Slack. Come join us on our Slack. A lot of great things going on there. A lot of channels of various InfoSec-related subjects. You can get an invite on Twitter by emailing our official Twitter handle for the show at BrakeSec, BRAKESEC, or you can email us at bds.podcast@gmail.com. Thank you to all of our Patreon supporters for their monetary assistance by offsetting costs involved in putting out a weekly show. Zoom fees, Libsyn hosting, domain purchase, renewal, equipment upgrades, time and effort building the community we have. We appreciate all of your help and support. If you'd like a t-shirt, stickers, coffee mug, or just to show your support for the show, you can check out our TPub site, www.tpublic.com/user/BDS podcast. We thrive on your feedback. A quick 5-star comment on iTunes or Google Play Store or your favorite streaming service, Spotify, Pandora, what have you, go a long way to gaining us additional visibility. It takes no time at all, and we appreciate your help in spreading the word. That was it for Breaking Down Security this week. Be safe, be well, be kind to one another, take care of yourself because you're the only you have, and we'll talk to you again soon.